Chapter 8. Ark's Emptiness. His heart felt empty. That was the first thing he thought when he realized he was awake. It was as if part of his very soul had been ripped out of his chest. This feeling wasn't entirely new per se. He felt some of this emptiness every time he watched one of his friends, his classmates, meet their brutal end in this killing game. But this was different. Someone's death left behind an air of life. Dying was never permanent, so long as there were people to remember you. People didn't stick around as ghosts or spirits after death. They stayed in the form of memories and lasting impressions. Death doesn't mean you're ever truly gone. That's how Kokichi saw it, anyway. The absence of a physical presence would leave a void in itself. Of course it would, but there was always something left behind. It was never like this. It never felt as though a piece of the world had simply removed itself from all reality, like he had never existed in the first place. It was embarrassing, but the feeling brought tears to Kokichi's eyes. He couldn't help it. How could anyone feel this way and not cry? Even then, it was as if Shuichi had died. He hadn't even been hurt in any way. He was simply not there anymore. One minute, he was sharing his warm voice with Kokichi, his face wonderful and melancholy, and the next, he was gone. Just like that. What a strange feeling. It took a little bit for Kokichi to take in his surroundings again. His vision was blurry with tears, and he kept sniffling, his breath hitching and uneven. But he knew there was something he had to do. Right. Shuichi's room.
I'm hoping you'll cover everything I can't while I'm gone. Mainly, everything regarding the mastermind. You're my best bet on that front, Kokichi.
Kokichi huffed weakly. That stupid idiot! He cursed, squeezing his tired eyes shut, leaving a liar like me to do his dirty work. He tried to reach up, to wipe his eyes clean, and was immediately reminded of the handcuffs around his wrists. Crap, he probably had to do something about that. Moving sucked. His entire body felt uncomfortably stiff as he swung his legs off the side of the bed. Everything ached as he stood up, a task made significantly more difficult when he was dizzy and lacked the use of his hands. He wondered what time it was. Looking at the door, it seemed like it was morning. But Kokichi wasn't too sure. Did he sleep through the morning announcement? I'd better hurry before the mastermind finds out Monokuma's destroyed, Kokichi realized. He didn't know why Shuichi wanted to destroy Monokuma, but looking at the folded note and key on the table, he was sure he could find the answers pretty easily. The first thing he did was free himself of those damn handcuffs and stretch his arms out to either side of him. His shoulders and wrists were so unbelievably sore, and it was a massive relief to be able to move them again. Shuichi was going to face his wrath for doing something so unnecessary. Wherever he is, his brain unhelpfully reminded him. Biting his bottom lip anxiously, Kokichi's eyes turned towards the folded note. That was the last thing Shuichi left behind, not for just him, but everyone.
I don't know what comes next, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to me, or to you, when I leave. Maybe we'll never see each other again. Or maybe I'll see you once the killing game is over, no matter what happens or what I find outside of the Ark. I'll do my best to save all of you.
Kokichi's hand was trembling as he picked up the small slab of paper. He unfolded it with delicate fingers, terrified of putting even the smallest dent in it. Shuichi's handwriting was small, varying in neatness, but remaining the same size overall. It was a long note, so Kokichi sat down on the chair behind him and mentally braced himself. The note said, "To my friends, when and if Kokichi gives this to you, I'm going to be gone. I don't know what effect my actions will have on the simulation, but I hope it's nothing too bad. I want to start this by explaining what I've been going through. By my estimate, this loop, my final stand, is somewhere around the 40th time I have relived this night. I might be wrong, but the numbers don't matter. What does matter is that I am, and have been, in a time loop. I didn't want to tell you in person. No one would believe me, and even if I do convince you, I want to do what I have to do alone. Believe it or not, I think you're all safer here, in the simulation, rather than outside of it. I'm sorry, Kaito. I know you told me not to act alone, but I've been alone for so long now. I can't figure out how I'd even ask for help. I've tried to ask for help, Kaito, but you and Maki told me I was delusional. You told me I couldn't fight time. You're right. I can't fight time. But it's like you said. The impossible is possible. You just have to make it so. So I found the truth behind the time loop, although a little inadvertently, and I discovered so much more than I would have thought. This killing game has taken place inside a virtual reality simulation. Everything within the bounds of the end wall is a map tailored to us 16 specifically. Some sort of team outside the simulation trapped us here and have been forcing us to play the killing game. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but that's the truth. Additionally, Monokuma said that he wasn't sure if the team was monitoring us anymore. If they were, they would have stopped the time loop a long time ago. That's all I know on that front. But to explain how I even found this out, I need to explain what happened during the time loop. The time loop resets itself every time a body discovery announcement plays, or whenever the next nighttime announcement plays. At first, I was naturally skeptical of everything that was happening. A time loop should be scientifically impossible. So how is this happening? And how do I stop it? Knowing what I know now, it makes a lot more sense. But at the time, I was confused and distressed. So I went to one of you for help. I had no idea at the time that the person I went to help me stop the very murder they wanted to happen was the mastermind. Ironically enough, it was you, mastermind, who gave me the advice I needed to come as far as I did. You told me to use the time loops to my advantage. So, I did. But in that attempt, the fourth loop, in which I spoke to you, I died, for the first time. You hit me with your electro hammer, and I died instantaneously. I can't describe death to its fullest. It's something you can only experience for yourself. Everything just stops. In my experience, though, dying is the most painful thing imaginable, because death isn't a reward anymore if you're brought back to life over and over. Based on my deductions, I believe that my body doesn't rewind with every time loop. Because I'm alive at the start of every loop, the simulation will bring me back, but it won't heal any injuries I had. That might be the worst part about coming back. After that, I didn't know who to trust. I thought Kokichi was the mastermind at the time. But still, I went through with the mastermind's advice. Despite how awful I felt, I used the time loops to watch everything play out. I know about how Himiko gives Kaito a crossbow to disarm Kokichi. Kibo. That is what you saw, isn't it? And then, you saw the green exisal enter the hangar. Well, inside that exisal was Maki. She used her electro hammer to hijack it and break into the hangar with a crossbow of her own, except her arrows were no normal arrows. Her arrows were coated in a lethal and slow-acting poison called Strike 9. She intended to torture Kokichi for answers. When she arrived in the hangar, she saw Kaito and Kokichi fighting, and that's when she shot Kokichi with one arrow. After realizing Kokichi wasn't going to answer any of her questions, Maki was going to kill him. But Kaito took the shot for him. He didn't want to let Maki become a murderer. And so, Kaito and Kokichi were both poisoned with Strike 9. And only one antidote existed. Maki ran to grab it from my lab, but Kokichi closed the shutter on her, so the only way she could try to give it to Kaito was through the bathroom window. Kokichi pretended to drink it, and when Maki runs away, he sets off an electro bomb and gives the antidote to Kaito. With Kaito now in his debt, he proposes his insane plan, a plan involving an unknown culprit. For this, he would need Kaito's cooperation, and Kaito agrees. Kokichi dies when he is crushed under the press. Since the electro bomb severed the safety function, I'm not sure where Kaito hides in the hangar. Maybe in the red exisal? Either way, this is what happens during the night. In the morning, we raid the hangar like usual, and we find Kokichi's crushed body under the hydraulic press. We all think it's Kaito, though, because it's his sleeve we see with all that blood. That is what happens during the night if I don't intervene. I tried stopping this from happening a lot of times. First, I stopped Maki from ever going to the hangar. I even stood outside all night to make sure she didn't go anywhere near it. Even so, Kokichi died. That's because I was missing the second piece of the puzzle. And this is when I learned that Kokichi is not the mastermind. It was all a lie that we fell for. You can ask him about it, but I doubt he'll tell you anything. But that's okay, Kokichi. I don't expect you to share your plans with everyone. All I need you to do is rely on mine. Anyway, he said that Maki's actions were instigated by the true mastermind, which is exactly what happened when we were all shown that flashback light. Knowing all of this, I decided to try stopping Maki from shooting Kaito. If she only shot Kokichi, I could give him the antidote, and no one would have to die. Simple, right? The shutter was open, so I could enter the hangar with no problems. I don't want to talk about what happened in this loop. Kokichi made Kaito and Maki think he manipulated me into protecting him from her. So Maki shot me with one of her poisoned arrows after sending Kaito off to grab the antidote. This was the loop I experienced my second death. A death I caused myself. I slit my neck open with the poisoned crossbow arrow, and that started a hell none of you would be able to understand. The poison was still in my body, even in the next loop. That didn't cross my mind when everything reset. I got so sick and so weak that I couldn't move. I died twice, very slowly. And on that third time, I managed to get to Maki's room and told her to get the antidote. I was really out of it for this one. I remember holding Himiko's hand after blacking out. I might have had a seizure looking back on it. I don't know. But just before I died, Maki gave me the antidote, and dying all those times was what did it in for me. When you die and come back, your brain turns off for a period of time. I don't know what happens to us in the real world when we die, but if it's anything like Mew, I was experiencing that over and over. I promised myself not to change because of the time loop, but what happens to me when my body is shut down and restarted over and over? What does that do to me as a person? This, combined with my critical lack of sleep, led to something I never thought I'd be capable of doing. I found a gun in the warehouse, And to stop Maki, Kaito, and Kokichi from killing each other, I held you three hostage at gunpoint until morning. I was acting crazy and irrational. I even shot Kaito to get my point across. I feel so terrible for that now. And Kaito, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to all three of you. Because I hurt all of you when I did that. You were all afraid. And I never wanted any of you to be scared of me. I just wanted no one to die. It was Kokichi who talked me down. I broke down crying, and when I dropped the gun, he hugged me, guided me away from everything, and convinced me to eat after I hadn't in so long. He let me fall asleep in his lap, and he took care of me until I woke up later that night. All of you were in my room. It was the happiest I had been, and I really thought the time loop would end. It didn't. Everything reset with the nighttime announcement, and so I went to Kaito for help. I didn't know what else to do. Kaito, you tried to help me, but you didn't believe me. Telling me that was the worst mistake you could have made in that moment, because it broke me. I spent the next few loops in bed. That's not all there is to it, though, because my determination wasn't entirely broken yet. There was still one last thing I had to try. I killed the mastermind. I slit their throat with a knife and dragged their body to the middle of the dormitory. Himiko found me first, and then Kibo. You two thought I was insane. And when Himiko ran to try and get Kaito's help, Maki came out of the school. She and Kibo pinned me down, and the body discovery announcement played when Maki went into the dormitory. I'll never forget the feeling of watching the mastermind die at my feet. Even to you, the mastermind, I'm so sorry. After this, I gave up. I spent every loop since then in bed, eating only when I had to, and avoiding all of you as much as I could. But killing the mastermind had broken something within the simulation, and in a 1 in 1,000th chance, the map that loaded with the next loop was not our own. I wound up on Jabberwock Island, where I met with Monokuma. He told me everything I needed to know about the simulation, and he also told me how to end the time loop. I had the first part right. I couldn't let anyone die until the next nighttime announcement. But what I was missing was the very cause of the time loop. Monokuma himself. When the electro bomb knocked out all electrical feedback, it affected Monokuma too. This simulation isn't designed in a way where Monokuma can't know who the culprit is. So when Kokichi died that first time, the simulation tried to fix itself by resetting back to its last trigger, the nighttime announcement. After that, the entire thing just broke. By destroying Monokuma, I destroyed the need for a trigger reset, and so time could run normally again. That's why I had you destroy him, Kokichi. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. All I ask is that you don't reset the time loop. I won't be there to fix it, and even if you don't remember it, it pains me to think that Kokichi is caught in a death loop again. I've trapped Maki and Kaito in the Exisal Hangar's bathroom, so you'll need to go free them if they haven't already found some way to break free. And please, don't persecute Kokichi. I need all of you to work together to make sure no one else dies while I'm gone. Please be patient until I can end the simulation. In the meantime, please, just stay there. I don't know what I'll be facing as I'm writing this. Maybe I'll have to face the team Monokuma talked about. Maybe it's entirely empty out here. Or maybe the truth is something much more reprehensible. But please, trust me to take care of it. Place your faith in me. After everything, that's all I want from you. You need to take care of the mastermind. I don't know if they know about the simulation or not, but no matter what, they're the mastermind, and they have to be restrained. Don't let them make another Monokuma. But also, please, don't kill them. I already know that won't work. I'm running out of writing room, so that's all I have to say. I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye to you all. And Kaito, Maki, I'm sorry for what I did to you. Kokichi, I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for drugging you, and I'm sorry for letting you die. Kibo, Himiko, I'm sorry you got caught up in all this. Sumugi, I'm sorry for killing you. And I'm sorry that it had to be you that was the mastermind. Despite what you've done to me, to all of us, I still miss you. You were my friend through it all. And if I'm right in what I've assumed, you're going to be just as angry at the team that put us here as everyone else. Goodbye, everyone. I love you. And I hope I'll get to see you all again. You've all been wonderful to me. I will never forget you. So please, don't forget me either. Shuichi, Saihara. Ding dong! The sound of the doorbell snapped Kokichi out of his trance. He had been staring mindlessly at the words scrawled by Shuichi for so long, he forgot about everything else. His body feeling numb, Kokichi stood up, still holding the note in his hand, and approached the door. By the time he thought, "Oh, this is going to be so awkward," he was already opening the door. It was K1B0 who had rung the doorbell, but Himiko and Samuki were there with him. Confusion turned into shock, turned into disbelief and anger, and all three of his classmates stumbled a step back, all exclaiming various cries at his appearance. "Surprise!" Kokichi greeted them, his voice embarrassingly hoarse. "Wasn't expecting me. Were you?" "Kokichi?" K1B0 cried out, gripping his electrohammer tightly. "What are you doing in Shuichi's bedroom?" "What did you do to him?" demanded Samugi. Kokichi tried not to let his face show disdain. "More like, what did he do to me? I have no idea how I got here. But maybe that's a lie. Maybe I roughed and toughed him up, and he's lying a bloody corpse behind me." While the two girls were bristling with hostility, K1B0's eyes narrowed, and he calculatively looked Kokichi up and down. For the sake of convincing, Kokichi let some of his weariness show in his slumped posture, in his damp cheeks, messy hair, and shaky hands. He didn't like showing weakness, but if he could weaponize his weakness to his advantage, then he'll gladly do so.
"You're why I try it all, Kokichi. I can't bear to see you die. Please, Kokichi, you don't have to trust me, but at least let me save you."
Oh, Shuichi. He must have a lot of faith in his friends to leave him alone with them. "Wait," K1B0 said to the girls, lowering his electrohammer slightly. "Something seems off about him." Kokichi gasped. "Really? But I'm just the same old mastermindy me I've always been. So, are you gonna bash my skull in with that hammer of yours? Huh? Will ya, key boy?" "What?" K1B0 exclaimed, looking genuinely taken aback. "No matter what you are, I would never—" "Wait!" Smugi realized suddenly, her eyes shooting wide. "Have you been crying? And is that blood on your sleeve?" Merely out of spite, Kokichi did not reach up to wipe away any remnants of his grief. In fact, he smiled bitterly at her, the words of his favorite person seared into his mind.
Samugi, I'm sorry for killing you. And I'm sorry that it had to be you that was the mastermind.
That sweet bastard apologized. He was sorry for something she wouldn't even know about. Don't let her know you know, Kokiji had to remind himself. If Shuichi was leaving things to him while he did whatever outside of the apparent simulation, then he was going to do things his own way, and that meant controlling the situation until Shuichi did his part. He tried to ignore the throbbing in his heart. Shuichi was not dead. He shouldn't feel so devastated. Maybe, Kokichi hummed. Or maybe they're the tears of a certain detective I just slaughtered. Will we ever know? K1B0 shoved past him so quickly he nearly lost his footing. He watched, mildly amused, as the robot panickedly hurried into Shuichi's bedroom. Himiko quickly followed suit, but Samugi stayed behind, standing in his path of potential escape. Realistically, he could flee this situation at any time, but he'd let her think she was in his way. What did you do with Shuichi? K1B0 urgently demanded upon realizing the room was crime-free.
And Maki,
Himiko added helpfully.
I thought Kaito was disarming you.
Samugi looked stunned. Kaito was doing what? Was everyone involved in last night's chaos except me? Kokichi rolled his eyes, walking back into the room to properly address his friends. Classmates? Acquaintances? It was hard to tell. So, maybe I did bash his brain in, Kokichi began. But you're not going to find him. Shuichi's gone.
Gone?
Himiko echoed nervously. Yep, he said, effortlessly lackadaisical. He's not dead or anything, don't worry. He's just totally vanished. But man, would you really believe a liar like me? The mastermind of this killing game? I did lock up Kaito. Nishishi. Who's to say Shuichi isn't? Trapped somewhere, too. We should really restrain this guy, Samugi pointed out warily. As incomprehensible as his actions are, he is not necessarily wrong, K1B0 a bit reluctantly said. I felt it since this morning. Something feels as if it is missing, doesn't it? Himiko blinked at him in surprise.
Yeah, you too? I thought it was my magic acting up because I didn't sleep well last night.
I felt that too, Samugi gasped. I woke up last night because I felt like a lightning bolt plainly struck me in my sleep, as if the very earth was rumbling beneath my bed. That was probably the bomb Shuichi set off, Kokichi commented nonchalantly. Mastermind or not, Samugi's expression was so worth it. What? Yeah, did I mention he went a little crazy last night? 'Cause he was totes losing it. Kokichi inspected his nails, feigning disinterest. I didn't know Kaito had bodyguards when I decided to take him prisoner, because both Maki and Shuichi came to the hangar with goddamn weapons. Hey, did you know we have actual guns somewhere here on campus? Wait, interjected K1B0. Maki and Shuichi stormed the hangar last night? What happened to waiting until morning?
Were they planning to attack without us?
Himiko wondered dejectedly. Actually, Maki came alone. She just wanted to kill me. Kokichi corrected the two of them. Shuichi had his own thing going on. It was pretty funny at first, but then he started pointing his gun at me, and it started getting boring. Wait, I'm confused, Samugi announced. We're talking about the same Shuichi, right? Shuichi Saihara? Nope. I'm actually referring to the demon Kyo brought back with his caged dog ritual. Kokichi automatically lied. I find it hard to believe Shuichi would do such an outrageous and irrational thing, K1B0 stated. Shuichi is fairly level-headed, and he's not one to resort to violence so easily. Even with all his training, he's always been the pacifist type, don't you think? Tsumugi agreed doubtfully. Unless that wound in your arm is from him? His hand subconsciously found its way to the side of his arm, and he bore a small, strained smile. That's from Kaito, actually. All three of them ganged up on me, which was completely unfair, by the way. But if you want proof that Shuichi actually went batshit last night, check it. Still clutching the note in one hand, Kokichi used his other to pull up his sleeve. As he expected, his skin was bruised and indented from those handcuffs. It made sense. Those were made in Ryoma size, coming from his ultimate research lab. Kokichi's wrists could fit, but not comfortably. See those handcuffs? Kokichi jerked his head in the direction of the handcuffs, sitting harmlessly on the table. I had to wear those while he shoved a gun into the side of my head. He also brought me here after drugging me to sleep, which is why I didn't escape earlier. He really thought of everything, though, didn't he? To say his three classmates looked baffled would be an understatement. They were staring at him as if he had spontaneously grown a second head.
I'm really confused.
Himiko found her voice first. Should we even be listening to him? Tsumugi wondered, with an uncertain glance at the other two. Isn't he the mastermind? What if he's just lying about everything? It's fine if you think I'm lying, Kokichi said. He held up the note, Shuichi's final message, for everyone to see. But at least, believe this. K1B0 inhaled. Is that from Shuichi? Wow, the robot is actually being reliable for once, Kokichi exclaimed, though his heart wasn't in it. Before K1B0 could retort, he continued. Yep, Shuichi wrote this. It explains why he went a little bonkers. It also tells us some really interesting information about the killing game itself. This was going to be rough. Kokichi didn't want to give away the last thing Shuichi had left behind, especially when his heart ached so badly for him. It was irrational. He knew Shuichi wasn't dead. He had no reason to feel like this. But even so... Oh, if the others felt this emptiness, it must have been Shuichi leaving the simulation, Kokichi realized. If that's the case, then, is the proof in itself that Shuichi is being truthful? Kokichi didn't know. This all came to him kind of fast. One thing's for sure. He didn't think Shuichi was lying.
Goodbye, Kokichi. I hope we'll meet again.
He closed his eyes for a moment to recollect himself. Shuichi was just being dramatic. Kokichi would hunt him down to the ends of the earth if that's what he had to do. Kibo, do you want the honor of reading this aloud? Kokichi questioned, with a sly smile, offering the note out to the robot. K1B0 looked suspicious. Kokichi didn't expect him not to be. But regardless, he cautiously accepted the note, smoothing it out to be readable. It's quite long, K1B0 observed. Extremely long. This is from Shuichi? I definitely didn't write it, Kokichi confirmed. Go on, read it. I have to admit, I am pretty curious, Tsumugi encouraged the robot. What does it say? I suppose... Despite how troubled K1B0 appeared, he cleared his throat. Listen close. With that, K1B0 began reading out loud. Kokichi was glad he had so much practice with wearing a fake expression, because he could easily put on a blank face to hide how he truly felt. Reading the note alone was one thing, but listening to K1B0 echo Shuichi's words was like twisting the knife already stuck in his heart. In fact, he felt dumb for feeling so strongly about someone. Killing game or not, this was all just gross. As he expected, the first mentions of the simulation confused them. Even Tsumugi looked genuinely shocked. The time loop was even more surprising, which he could understand. He had been surprised to hear a legitimately plausible explanation for such an insane thing. Shuichi's recollection of the past time loops, telling them of things they did that they'd never remember. It certainly had an impact on the three, who were hearing it for the first time. Kokichi kept an eye on Tsumugi. When K1B0 was reading out Shuichi's description of his crime, sounding faintly nauseous, Tsumugi had been growing increasingly pale. It was satisfying, seeing her growing unease, as K1B0 read on and on, growing ever closer to the reveal. Kibo, Himiko, I'm sorry you got caught up in all of this. K1B0 read, with a tight frown. He paused, his eyes widening slightly as he inevitably read ahead.
Shuichi.
Himiko whispered sympathetically.
He must have felt terrible.
I can't imagine being in such a position,
Tsumugi agreed, although a little reluctantly.
Kibo? Why'd you stop?
K1B0 hesitated, eyeing Tsumugi uncertainly. Shuichi named the mastermind.
Yeah, he did?
Himiko shot upright, suddenly, looking wide awake.
Who is it?
Tell us, Kibo,
Kokichi added, with significantly less enthusiasm. K1B0 was quiet for a few moments longer, staring at Tsumugi. It was obvious that he knew, and Tsumugi was not ignorant to this fact. Tsumugi, I'm sorry for killing you, and I'm sorry that it had to be you that was the mastermind. With how silent the room went, the sound of a pin dropping would be equivalent to an atomic bomb going off.
Well, there you have it.
Kokichi decided to speak first.
Tsumugi Shirogane is the mastermind of this killing game. She's the one forcing us to kill each other.
Wait, what?
Tsumugi yelped in horror.
What does that mean? I'm the mastermind? How would he even know? Tsumugi is a mastermind?
Himiko murmured, gazing at the cosplayer doubtfully.
There's no way, right?
If everything Shuichi has described is true, then he has a fair reason to assume that's the case, K1B0 pointed out. Tsumugi, is this true? Are you the mastermind?
Well, if she is, we should probably take away that hammer,
Kokichi butted in. That is what she used to kill Shuichi, after all. Tsumugi dropped the electrohammer, as if it had burned her. Kokichi tried not to cringe, as it carelessly clattered on the ground. She could at least try to respect one of Miu's inventions, even if the girl had done little to deserve it.
But can we really determine if I'm the mastermind because of something I never did?
Tsumugi frantically questioned. She made this too easy, Kokichi thought.
So, are you calling Shuichi a liar?
Tsumugi blanched.
That's not what I—
Finish reading the will, Kibo. Kokichi interrupted her.
There's just a little left.
The room was tense as K1B0 continued to read what Shuichi had left them. And then, finally, he was finished, citing Shuichi's ending signature, just as it was written. Kokichi kept his expression carefully blank, his eyes locked on the mastermind, who appeared to be a little stunned. Now that K1B0 was done, Kokichi wanted nothing more than to snatch that note right out of the robot's stiff, hard hands. Shuichi wasn't coming back, and Kokichi was going to be really upset if that note was damaged. Now that he was fully paying attention, though, what did Shuichi mean by Tsumugi being just as angry as everyone else? She was the mastermind, so logic dictates she would have worked with that mysterious team Shuichi kept bringing up. Why would she be angry at them?
I'm not really the mastermind!
Sumugi tried helplessly, and at this point, Kokichi was finding her excuses pathetic. So, if you're not the mastermind, prove it. Kokichi challenged her. Let us restrain you until we have definitive proof you aren't the mastermind.
What would be the benefit of that?
She cried out, horrified.
How do we know you didn't just forge this note?
As shocking as it sounds, I don't think Kokichi forged this. K1B0 interjected with certainty. I've seen Shuichi's handwriting before, and this certainly matches it.
What if Kokichi just copied it?
Himiko suggested, but even she didn't sound too confident in her reasoning. Why don't you ask Kaito and Maki? Kokichi shot back, with a sly smirk in Sumugi's direction. If I really did forge this, then that means I was making everything up about last night. So, let's go ask the two Shuichi also waved a gun at. Sumugi looked pale, and Kokichi gladly relished the sense of control he had. He hated feeling helpless, so this was a very welcome turnaround. Shuichi could feel sorry for her all he wanted, but Kokichi was not as nice a person as he was. He wanted Sumugi in the ground. We need to rescue them anyway, K1B0 concurred, delicately folding the note, and effectively causing Kokichi's blood pressure to spike. Kokichi, would you? Kokichi didn't wait a single second longer. He swiped the note out of K1B0's hands, hiding it in his scarf, where he stored most small things. It was surprisingly handy in that way. Don't judge him.
I don't want to think Sumugi's the mastermind,
Himiko declared.
I thought Kokichi was the mastermind. I don't really know what to believe anymore.
Shuichi did say we could ask Kokichi about his plans, K1B0 recalled, already turning to him. Let's hurry up and make sure the idiots didn't get themselves obliterated by an exisal. Kokichi spoke over him. And we've got to make sure Miss Mastermind doesn't slip away from us. It'd be trouble if she made a new Monokuma.
Fine. If you think I'm the mastermind, then I'll do everything I can to show you I'm not,
Sumugi declared determinedly.
So, even if you have to handcuff me, or whatever you're going to do, I won't resist, because I am innocent.
What an inspiring declaration, Kokichi gasped in mock awe. But it's not working on me. Let's handcuff her.
Yeah, didn't the handcuffs not fit?
Himiko asked, her eyes trailing to the handcuffs on the table. Kokichi deadpanned at her. Your point? I want to believe Shuichi, but given that this came from Kokichi, we'd need more definitive proof, reasoned K1B0. Sumugi, you will come with us to the exisal hangar to free Kaito and Maki. If you really are not the mastermind,
I'll come with you,
Sumugi automatically agreed.
I'm sure they can prove my innocence.
And once we do, we'll know Kokichi is the mastermind, and that note is fake,
Himiko murmured thoughtfully.
Okay, let's go.
That was fine by Kokichi. He knew for a fact that Kaito and Maki were going to corroborate his story. With Kokichi and Sumugi sandwiched between Himiko and Kibo, the four of them began out of the dormitory. While Kokichi made sure his walk was leisurely and unbothered, Sumugi was stiff, uncertain. She knew she was done for if Kokichi's story was verified. So, why was she going along with this so easily? Kokichi would have expected her to put up more of a fight.
And if I'm right in what I've assumed, you're going to be just as angry at the team that put us here as everyone else.
Of all of Kokichi's habits to pick up, of course, it had to be the one where he didn't tell anyone anything obviously helpful. Did Shuichi think Sumugi was also forced to participate in the killing game? despite being the mastermind that orchestrated the whole thing? How did he come to that conclusion? "I'm worried about what we'll find," K1B0 announced on their way to the hangar. "If Shuichi's story is true, then none of this is real. This is all a virtual reality simulation?" Kokichi shrugged. "It explains the time loop. He was rambling off about that while he and Monokuma were fighting." He might have forgotten to bring that up, because K1B0's head swiveled around to look at him. "Shuichi and Monokuma were fighting?" "Huh? Oh, yeah." Now that he had read the note, their whole argument made a lot more sense. Before Shuichi had me flatten Monokuma with an exisal, Shuichi wanted Monokuma to tell him about the end wall. He said that if Monokuma didn't tell him, he'd kill me, and let the time loops continue forever. "What?" Even Sumugi sounded shocked at that. "I thought he wanted nothing more than for the time loops to end." "Apparently, it was fine, 'cause only he remembered them," Kokichi hummed. "He's so selfless, don't you think? I wonder how many more times he'd let me die if Monokuma kept his mouth shut." "He had to be bluffing, right?" K1B0 guessed uncertainly. "As violent as these alleged time loops have made him, I'm sure Shuichi wouldn't give up a second time simply because Monokuma wouldn't give him the information he wanted." Kokichi wasn't sure about that one. He didn't know exactly what Shuichi would have done, but he was glad he was in a timeline where Monokuma complied. It'd really suck for everyone otherwise. The exisal hangar was just as Kokichi left it. Everyone made a beeline for the shutter, which was closed, for the record. But with a little alarm remote privilege and K1B0 using his electro hammer on the panel, they were back inside within minutes. Now came his least favorite part, convincing Shuichi's overprotective friends that he didn't murder their beloved detective. In his defense, Shuichi was also his beloved detective, and he would never think about hurting him. Intentionally. But that wasn't the point right now. "Kaito? Maki! Can you hear us?" K1B0 shouted past the exisal, which was still sitting dormant against the bathroom door, preventing anyone from getting past it. "We're here to free you!" Although muffled, Kokichi heard what he guessed was Maki's voice. "Kibo, it's about time." "Hurry up and get us out of here!" Kaito shouted, although his voice was significantly weaker. "I've got some words I gotta give Shuichi."
"They're in for a surprise,"
Himiko commented dryly. "Whatever, let's just get this over with." Kokichi reached into his pocket and retrieved the exosome remote. He needed a bag or something like Shuichi had. He had way too much stuff on him. Hell, he had 2 electro bombs hidden in his scarf as well. Maybe he should get a sparkly purse or something. He could make it checker-themed. Whoops! Thoughts got off track. Anyways, Himiko, Sumugi, and K1B0 all scrambled far out of the way of the exisal as Kokichi piloted it away from the door. Its footsteps were loud and thunderous, especially when he was standing right next to it, hands wrapped around his throat, and his vision went white with how hard his head hit the floor. What the fuck? Being choked wasn't new to him, and as he met the cold, red eyes boring into his, he realized what was happening pretty fast. Maki was trying to strangle him to death. "Maki!" Multiple people cried out at once, but Kokichi could barely hear them. His ears were still ringing. Might have hit his head a little too hard. Fuck.
You really killed me.
He couldn't get the words out. His vision was blackening around the edges, and despite the pain in his throat and chest, his body felt strangely numb.
You know what death is? Nothing. You're there, and then you're not. Everything just stops.
No, Kokichi didn't want to die. He couldn't fight, But he didn't want to die. "I couldn't kill you last night," Maki hissed into his ear, her voice sounding so close yet far away, all at the same time. "But I won't fail again." "I'm going to die." If she did that, the killing game would continue. What if Shuichi's right? I'll be back anyway. He wouldn't know. He didn't want to lose his memories. He didn't want to die. Fuck, he really doesn't want to die. And then, as suddenly as it had been taken from him, air rushed through his nose and mouth, and he inhaled so hard it hurt. He choked on his own ragged breath, struggling to steady his breathing and effectively making himself lightheaded. Someone placed a hand on his shoulder, carefully helping him sit up. He hated that he could feel tears pricking his eyes, tears from the pain in his head and neck. And wow, did getting choked usually hurt this bad? The last 2 times Maki had suspended him by the neck hadn't been as bad as this. But maybe that was because his head hadn't been violently bashed into the ground beforehand. Or did he just fall and hit his head? Maki moved so fast, he didn't even know. "I probably should have seen that one coming," he thought, as soon as he found the mental capacity to think again. "Stupid me. Yes, let's stand in the direct line of eyesight of the girl with murderous rage that has been brewing overnight. That's an awesome idea." "You can't kill him, Maki!" Kaito was shouting at the assassin, which he found immensely satisfying. "I don't care who's the mastermind! You can't kill anyone!"
"That's the only reason I came to the hangar in the first place," Maki snapped. "To kill the mastermind. This game was going to end." "But Shuichi says he might not be the mastermind,"
interjected Himiko, who was surprisingly blocking Maki's path to Kokichi. Kaito perked up. "You talked to Shuichi?" "We can explain everything, but we can't be fighting each other," K1B0 exclaimed. And that's when Kokichi realized that the robot was the one who was helping him sit upright. "Please, hear us out!" Despite how dizzy he felt, he slapped away K1B0's hand, or at least tried to. His arm was a tiny bit sloppy. It had its intended effect, though, because K1B0 released him. "Kokichi, are you okay?" Tsumugi looked at him anxiously. "You look plainly concussed." "It's not the first time I've hit my head," Kokichi quipped as he struggled to his feet. As embarrassing as it would be to fall at all, he stayed close to K1B0, just in case. "Jeez, Maki, with how intent you are on killing me, I'm surprised you're not the mastermind." Maki glowered at him, as if she could kill him through the sheer force of her eyeballs. His hand was shaking as he reached into his scarf, and he presented Shuichi's note. It was difficult to force a smile, and the one he did form was half-hearted. "This is from Shuichi," Kokichi told them, his voice hoarse. His throat was throbbing with agony, and he said some pretty interesting things. "How about you read it?" K1B0 suggested to the two. "Shuichi claims some pretty unbelievable things."
"We're not even sure if that note came from Shuichi,"
Himiko griped. "Yes, Kokichi is the one who gave us that note," K1B0 explained, and Kokichi did not appreciate the immediate suspicious looks he got from Kaito and Maki. "We found him in Shuichi's room. He claimed that Shuichi drugged and handcuffed him after attacking the hangar last night. If you can corroborate his story, we can confirm the note's legitimacy." "I wouldn't say he attacked the hangar," Kaito corrected the robot. "He had a gun, sure, but I don't think he was actually going to hurt us. But, geez, is that really what happened after we were locked in the bathroom?" Kokichi would laugh, if his throat didn't hurt so much. "You mean the note is real?" K1B0 sputtered, with a horrified look at Tsumugi. "That means Kokichi is telling the truth. Tsumugi, are you really the mastermind?"
"Hold on!"
Tsumugi yelped.
"Just because because Shuichi attacked the hangar and kidnapped Kokichi doesn't mean anything he wrote is real.
But he knew about what I saw, K1B0 argued. He knew that Himiko delivered Kaito his crossbow.
I did do that,
Himiko agreed, shuffling a step away from the cosplayer.
You're the mastermind, Samugi?
Maki's deadly gaze slowly turned to lock on Samugi. Kaito's turn was much less ominous, but his shock was much more obviously perceivable. Samugi looked close to tears.
I'm not... No! Let's have Kaito and Maki read his note. They're his best friends, aren't they? Maybe they know something.
Give it up already, Samugi. Kokichi cut her off. Her jaw clinked shut, and she stared at him, simultaneous powerlessness and desperacy making her body shake. We all know it's you, no matter what Kaito and Maki think of this note. It won't change the facts. But if you're really hung up about it, we could all head over to the girls' bathroom on the first floor. Samugi went still. That was all the reaction Kokichi needed. The first trial had always been fishy to him. Once he had gotten over the initial shock of Kaede being executed and really thought about it, it was a little odd. Who's to say Kaede's ball landed on Rantaro's head anyway? If it did, how did it create a blood splatter like that against the bookcase? In hindsight, Samugi's alibi for way back then wasn't suspicious at all. It was unfortunate that she had to use the bathroom and leave her eyewitnesses at the time of the murder. But sometimes people were just unlucky. It happens. But knowing what he knew now, he could only see Samugi's alibi as suspicious. That was pretty convenient timing for an already uncertain murder, and Samugi's reaction pretty much gave herself away. Give me that! Maki's voice snapped him out of his thoughts, and he forced himself to suppress a flinch as she took Shuichi's note out of his hands. Be careful with it, K1B0 warned her as she unfolded the note with a little less care than Kokichi was comfortable with. It's the last thing we have from Shuichi, and Kokichi is taking his absence the hardest.
What Kokichi are you talking about?
Kokichi demanded with a glare at the robot. What gave you the impression I cared at all? You... K1B0 helplessly trailed off, seeming to realize there was no point in arguing. You are very confusing to me. Of course a robot wouldn't understand the complexity of human beings. Kokichi sneered. Would you shut up? Maki snapped at him before K1B0 could retaliate. I'm trying to read this. Yeah, give us a sec, agreed Kaito. He was leaning over Maki's shoulder to look at the note. Begrudgingly, Kokichi closed his mouth. He didn't like being bossed around, but for the sake of progression, he'd let those two focus. It only took a minute or two. Much to his shock, it was Kaito who finished first, averting his eyes with a tisk. Maki finished shortly after, lifting her head to stare at Samugi. Damn it! Kaito cursed quietly. Shuichi, is it really true? Are we really in some sort of simulation? As insane as it sounds, I believe that is the only possible explanation for all of this, said K1B0, his voice grim with certainty, which means he is correct about Samugi as well. Now, everyone was looking at Samugi, who knew there was no way out of this. She had to know it was pointless. She'd never make it if she ran, and there wasn't a soul in the room who didn't believe she was the mastermind. There was no way to talk herself out of this one. Samugi tried, beads of sweat profusely rolling down the side of her face.
I'm not...
There's no point in trying to deny it, Kokichi told her, unable to stop himself from grinning at her. This entire killing game has taken place in a simulation. There's no other way to explain how Shuichi knows what he knows. You are the mastermind, Samugi Shirogane. The flashback light. Was it Real? Maki questioned darkly. Is Kokichi really a remnant of despair? Does Junko Inoshima even exist? Kokichi wasn't sure what a remnant of despair or a Junko Enoshima was, but it certainly seemed to ring a bell for everyone else, sans Kaito.
Yeah, the flashback light was fake?
Himiko asked, thoughtfully bringing a finger to her chin.
How could that be, though?
Think about it this way, Kokichi offered simply. If there's technology to remove specific memories, who's to say there isn't technology to give us false memories? Right, Tsumugi? Tsumugi was holding her arm, not looking at anything in particular. Something about this doesn't feel right, Kaito commented, following a lapse of tense silence. It's not that I don't believe Shuichi. I don't think he's lying at all. He's not the type of guy to do that. But something he wrote really caught my attention.
What are you talking about?
Maki asked the astronaut, sounding faintly exasperated. He said that Tsumugi was going to be just as mad at the team as we were, Kaito recalled. He placed a hand on his hip, frowning deeply. I don't get why that'd be. I mean, you'd think the mastermind and the team would be working together, right? Why would Shuichi think otherwise? That was also something Kokichi had found strange, and he was honestly relieved that Kaito was the one to bring it up. As stupid as he was, he did have an eye for people. His intuition was pretty good, as much as Kokichi hated to admit it. Tsumugi, Kaito said to the mastermind, who finally looked at him. If you're the mastermind, just tell us. We've got to know if the team Shuichi mentioned screwed you over too. Working together with the mastermind? Kokichi couldn't help but scoff. Were you dropped on your head as a baby? That is only if Shuichi's theory is right, K1B0 reminded the astronaut. She could very well be working with the team. But if she isn't, that makes her a valuable ally, doesn't it? Kaito argued, moving to stand beside Tsumugi. It sounds like we have a bigger enemy, and that's the team that put us all into this simulation in the first place. Even if Tsumugi didn't want to be here, she has all the reason to fight the team with us. It's beneficial for all of us.
Who's to say anything Shuichi said was real?
Tsumugi protested weakly.
Simulation? Isn't that plain crazy? Mew already proved that stuff like that can exist, Himiko reminded her, a bit hesitantly. It's hard to be surprised when we've gone through this before.
The more you fight, the more pathetic you look, Kokichi added, simply to be mean. We need all the help we can get, Kaito insisted, shooting him a warning glare. Just admit it, Tsumugi. Tell us everything you know. Tsumugi sidled a step away from him. She was holding herself, simultaneous panic and dismay and uncertainty, creating a complex expression on her face. She was afraid. Kokichi knew that much. Afraid of what would come next. And she should be. Kokichi didn't intend to let the mastermind off scot-free, no matter how much she worked with the team. Kaito does kind of have a point, his brain traitorously whispered. She'd have valuable information as the mastermind. Knowing what she does and doesn't know will help us figure out what's happening. It's not like it'd matter if she backstabbed us anyway. Information. That's it. Kaito could whine about friendship or belief or whatever it was he was preaching. But he was right on one thing. Tsumugi had some intel Kokichi was getting one way or another. Finally, Tsumugi sighed.
It was supposed to be revealed next chapter, but I guess things have already plainly gone off the rails.
She lifted her glasses with one hand and turned her head. When she looked back at everyone, her eyes were a searing, terrifying shade of blue. Blue like ice. Blue like fire. A blue that sent a cold shiver of raw, unadulterated wrongness down his spine. That wasn't right. No person's eyes should hold that much malice.
Fine. You're right.
Sumugi's voice was strained, as if the words physically pained her.
I am the mastermind. This is way off script, and not at all how I wanted things to go. But there's not much I can do to fix it at this point.
So, it is true, K1B0 murmured, noticeably tensing. Script? Maki repeated, her expression darkening into something much more dangerous instantaneously. As she adjusted her glasses, Sumugi's lips pulled taut.
We had a script to define how the season was supposed to go. I actually got to write it all myself. The protagonist was going to kill someone in the first chapter, and the protagonist would take their place for the rest of the game. Of course, there were also little things, like the third chapter double murder, or the fourth chapter's culprit. But a lot of stuff was left up to the characters I wrote. All of you.
Fourth chapter? Does she mean the fourth case? She planned Gonta's crime? Kokiji stared at her, carefully wiping his expression blank. Is she trying to tell me I'm just a character? She wrote.
But
Sumugi's smug demeanor fell, and she likely narrowly avoided being lunged at by Maki, who looked outwardly murderous now.
Even I'm doubting myself now. I guess that team Shuichi was talking about could be Team Danganronpa, who are the producers of this show. But this is the first I'm hearing of a simulation.
So I was right, Kokiji blurted out. This killing game was being shown to someone as entertainment.
This was meant to be Danganronpa's 53rd season,
Sumugi lamented.
I really shouldn't be telling you this, but Danganronpa is a long-running, beloved television show worldwide. Or, at least, I thought so.
You thought so? K1B0 stammered, still seeming to be reeling from the sudden information dump that had been dropped on their heads.
According to the lore, the Jabberwock Island killing game took place inside a simulation called the Neo-World Program.
The mastermind explained, her voice casual, as if she were talking about the weather.
It was made as a hope rehabilitation project for the 15 remnants of despair, including the big baddie himself, Izuru Kamakura. This wasn't in my script at all, and stuff like hyper-realistic simulations don't actually exist in real life. We only recently invented the blackout and flashback lights. That's why I'm so plainly confused. I don't know what's going on.
Izuru Kamakura. Oh, his brain did not like that. He could barely keep his eyes open from the sharp jab of discomfort that was shot through the side of his skull. Wait! This is all some TV show? Kaito burst out, which Kokichi found hilariously ironic, considering he was the one whining about cooperation earlier. What the hell do you mean we're characters?
I don't even know if anything I tell you now is true or not, because even I don't know what's outside anymore!
Sumugi shouted back, with an uncharacteristic stroke of assertiveness.
I thought it was strange when I lost my line of connection with Team Danganronpa so early on. I can't ask them if they went against my script or not. I don't remember ever entering a simulation, and they can't manipulate my memories without my consent. It's against the company's policy!
Your company runs a killing game for entertainment, Kokichi snorted. I don't think they care about policy. How does a company even run something like this legally? Maki wondered, which wasn't something Kokichi had considered yet. Contract or no contract, this seems pretty hard to get past the law.
Even so, highly advanced simulations don't exist yet,
Sumugi fretted.
We have virtual reality, but nothing near as advanced enough to give us an experience like this.
She gestured vaguely to the surrounding hangar. Oh! K1B0 perked up suddenly, his eyes going wide. I believe I may understand what Shuichi's theory was.
You do?
Asked Himiko, who was hiding her face under her hat. The Jabberwock Island killing games. What are the chances that this is a non-fiction event? K1B0 suggested. If so, that likely means the season that took place before it is also non-fiction. Sumugi's face went deathly pale.
that's the case, then that means the tragedy actually happened. Oh!
Understanding suddenly washed over her expression.
I guess that'd explain a lot, wouldn't it? If a bunch of despairs took inspiration from the killing games.
That word again. Despair. Kokichi scowled at the mastermind. What is that supposed to mean? Why does it keep coming up? You mean the meteors actually hit? K1B0 exclaimed in pure horror.
Well,
Sumugi trailed off for a moment, cupping her cheek in one hand.
Kokichi was right about one thing. The flashback light memories are almost entirely fake. All right, I guess I can explain.